to Level Up Test Prep. We're going to hit up body paragraph number 2 on our American Revolution essay. So I'm just going to give you a introduction before I hit up the paragraph to show you what it's going to be about. So if you know anything about the American Revolution, you'll know there was a big contention about the right to govern. Now, what makes this interesting is the colonists actually did accept some parliamentary authority, but they did not accept full parliamentary authority. This is going to create the tension. This is what's going to spark the debate, or you can even say the dialectic between them. And that's going to kind of be our frame for how to think about body paragraph number 2. Okay, so I'm going to open up with a topic sentence that should reveal what my paragraph is going to be about. A good way to check if your topic sentence is good is if somebody can predict what the paragraph will be about based off just the topic sentence alone. So I'm going to open up, and I'm going to try to follow a chronological timeline here. If you're struggling to write an essay and you don't know where to begin, just try to write it in order of the events. That's the easiest kind of framework to think about. So I'm just going to follow my own timeline here based on the American Revolution. So after the Sugar Act went into effect and the colonists protested the tax, the debates then transformed into a question of sovereignty. That's a big critical key word here to understand, sovereignty. And that relates to what I wrote up here. Colonists accept some parliamentary authority, but they did not accept full parliamentary authority. And therein lies the question of sovereignty and who has the right to govern whom here. So the colonists were now at a crossroads. Were they to govern themselves, or were they to be governed by Parliament? And I would actually even add an extra layer of historical content here and context. Were they govern themselves locally, or were they to be governed by Parliament far away, or by a faraway Parliament? So this again kind of reinforces the debate of sovereignty, and one of the factors is local government versus distant government. They didn't like that Parliament was on the other side of the Atlantic making decisions for them, and at the heart of the American Revolution is the right to self-govern, and one element of that is the locality. So I'm going to leave a question there. I'm going to answer my own question. In short, the colonists believed that Parliament did have some legitimate right to rule over them, but that there was a legitimate right to self-rule in some affairs. And that's the debate here is, can they govern taxes? Can they govern their migration patterns? Can they govern their commerce and how they buy and sell things? Could they regulate their ability to make their own currency? Could they regulate their ability to represent themselves? So all this is going to boil up into the American Revolution. After the after Parliament saw the colonists question and even discredit their rule, they issued the Declaratory Act of 1766. Which stated that the said colonies and plantations in America have been, are, and of right ought to be subordinate unto and dependent upon the imperial crown and Parliament of Great Britain. Okay, so this is a pretty definitive statement, unequivocal, unambiguous, almost impossible to misinterpret what they mean here. So you're seeing the question of, could they be taxed without their consent? Could the taxes be internal or external as it relates to the Sugar and Stamp Act? Could it be used to raise revenue? And then it really escalates at this point by 1766 to declare that they govern the entire set of colonies. And they are subordinate unto and dependent upon the imperial crown and Parliament of Great Britain. So this is really denying them their autonomy. And this is going to be the conflection point of whether to wrestle over the right to govern. Can the colonists govern themselves locally, or can Parliament govern them far away? And if Parliament can govern them far away, they still need to respect their British rights, one of which being the right to representation. So there's all these interlocking elements and layers of conflict, and they're going to compound upon one another until we reach a boiling point of the American Revolution. So now it's time to explain the quote. This proves that the Parliament was governing the colonies with a heavier hand than in the first half of the century. A few years later, Parliament again acted outside of its alleged jurisdiction by suspending the New York Assembly, according to a Pennsylvania farmer, which of course he's not a real Pennsylvania farmer, that's just his code name. Parliament did not have the right to suspend the New York Assembly as a major New York Assembly and that this was a reserved prerogative of the king. So whenever someone uses the term prerogative in this time period, just know they're referring to the king, because like the king has prerogatives. Okay, the colonists saw both the Declaratory Act and the suspension of New York Assembly as major parliamentary violations perpetrated outside the British Constitution. Now, one of the reasons why the revolution happened is because the perpetuated is because the British Constitution was unwritten. There was multiple documents spread across time, and they were adding to it through historical events, court decisions. It was never one single document. So that ambiguity, those gray areas, are going to be breeding grounds for conflict between them, which is why when the founders wrote their Constitution, it was like all in one document. They did it all together. This led the colonists to feel that they were losing their freedom to self-govern as Parliament passed more laws interfering with colonial affairs. So, my last sentence talks about losing freedom, and my first sentence is about sovereignty. So, it's nice to know that when you read the topic, the ending should connect back to something you said here. So, when I talk about losing freedom, that directly ties to the question of sovereignty. So it's nice to know I made those connections. I pose a question here: were they able to govern themselves locally, or were they to be governed by a faraway parliament? The answer is quite simple, that colonists would accept some parliamentary rule, but not full or total parliamentary rule. And when it comes to citing evidence, I use the Pennsylvania Farmer document, and I use the Declaratory Act to back up my claims. And let's just scroll back up. So I have here the Declaratory Act, and I have letters from a Pennsylvania farmer. And let's just read that one more time. There is one consideration arising from the suspension, which is not generally attended to, but shows its importance very clearly. It was not necessary that the suspension should be caused by an act of Parliament. The Crown might have restrained the governor of New York. So therein lies the question of who has the right to govern. Even if it is a British right, is it up to Parliament or the King? In America, we still have three branches where the Congress writes the laws and the President signs off. And if the President begins to write laws, we would know that that's a violation. So that's the analog there. And there you have it. That is paragraph 2. I cited 2 pieces of evidence regarding an increase of parliamentary control. This really strikes at the idea of sovereignty, and at the end, the colonists felt like they were losing their freedom, thus radicalizing them, thus pushing them one step closer to the revolution and declaring independence. All right, that's body paragraph 2. Thanks for leveling up with me. I'll see you all in body paragraph 3.